I never expected to find her in my rideshare that rainy November night. She slipped into the back seat with nothing but a small duffel bag, her blonde hair disheveled and mascara streaking down her porcelain cheeks. At first, I thought she was just another heartbroken passenger needing a ride home. But when she whispered his name, Marcus, my blood ran cold. The same Marcus who had shattered my world 2 years ago. The same Marcus whose charm had nearly destroyed me. And now, this trembling stranger in my car was running from him too. I should have driven her to her destination and forgotten about it, but something in her terrified eyes told me this wasn't over. For either of us. That night, two women bound by the same toxic love would make a choice that would change everything, and Marcus would finally pay for what he'd done.
My name is Claire Anderson, and I've always considered myself a survivor. At 28, with shoulder-length blonde hair that catches gold in the sunlight and green eyes that people say look kind, I rebuilt my life from scratch after Marcus left it in ruins. I drive for a rideshare company 3 nights a week, working toward my degree in psychology during the day. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. Honest. Safe. That November evening started like any other. Rain drummed against my windshield as I waited outside a downtown apartment building, my denim jacket pulled tight against the cold seeping through the car windows. My phone pinged with the pickup details. Emma, going to 1842 Riverside Drive. Simple enough, but when she opened my car door, everything changed. Emma couldn't have been more than 25. Despite her obvious distress, I could see she was beautiful. Delicate features, waves of golden hair falling past her shoulders, blue eyes swimming with tears. She wore an oversized cream hoodie under a light jacket, as if she'd left in a hurry. No coat, no umbrella. Just that worn duffel bag clutched to her chest like a lifeline. "Thank you for coming so fast," she whispered, her voice cracking. She didn't meet my eyes in the rearview mirror. Instead, she stared out the window, watching the building behind us, as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. I pulled away from the curb, my heart unexpectedly heavy with a feeling I couldn't name yet. Something about her reminded me of myself 2 years ago, broken, scared, and desperately trying to escape. I had no idea that in less than an hour, I'd learn we were escaping from the same nightmare, and that this ride would become the beginning of something neither of us could have predicted. The silence in the car felt thick and suffocating. I glanced at Emma through the rearview mirror, watching as she pressed herself against the door, creating as much distance as possible from the world outside. Her breathing was shallow and quick, like someone who'd just run a marathon. I wanted to ask if she was okay, but years of driving strangers had taught me when to speak and when to stay quiet. "Can you take a different route?" she suddenly asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not the highway, please. Any back roads you know?" I nodded and changed course, turning down a quiet residential street lined with ancient oak trees. The rain had softened to a gentle drizzle, and the streetlights cast amber pools on the wet pavement. I could feel the tension rolling off her in waves. "Are you safe?" I finally asked, keeping my tone gentle and non-judgmental. It was the question I wished someone had asked me once. Emma's eyes met mine in the mirror, and for a brief moment, I saw something that made my chest tighten. Pure, unadulterated fear, not just anxiety or sadness. This was the look of someone who believed they might not survive the night. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice breaking on the last word. A fresh tear rolled down her cheek. "I thought I was. I thought if I just left quietly, he wouldn't notice until morning, but then I saw his car. He's looking for me." She hugged the duffel bag tighter, her knuckles white against the dark fabric. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I'd heard too many stories like this,
seen too many women with that same haunted expression. But something about Emma felt different. Maybe it was the way she looked at me, as if she could somehow sense that I understood. Or maybe it was the universe's strange way of bringing people together when they need each other most. "Does he know where you're going?" I asked carefully. Emma shook her head quickly. "No, this is my friend Rachel's address. He doesn't know about her. We went to college together before I moved to here. She doesn't even know I'm coming. I had nowhere else to go." I took a deep breath and made a decision that would change both our lives. "Listen, I know we just met, but if you need help, real help, there are resources, shelters, legal aid, people who can protect you." Even as I said the words, they felt hollow. I'd heard them all before myself, the promises of protection that never quite materialized in time. Emma laughed bitterly. "You don't understand. He's not just some abusive boyfriend. He's connected. He has money, lawyers, friends in the police department. I tried reporting him once." She lifted the edge of her hoodie's sleeve, revealing a faded bruise that made my stomach turn. "The officer who took my statement went to college with him. Nothing happened except Marcus got angrier." The name hit me like a physical blow. My foot involuntarily pressed the brake, causing the car to jerk slightly. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Emma's expression shifted to something between confusion and wariness. She studied my face in the mirror, trying to read whatever had caused my sudden change in demeanor. "Marcus," she finally said. "Marcus Holloway?" Chapter 2. Ghosts of the Past. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Marcus Holloway. The name I'd spent 2 years trying to forget, suddenly spoken aloud in my car by a woman I'd never met. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I pulled over to the side of the road, putting the car in park beneath a broken streetlight. The darkness felt somehow appropriate for this moment. "Why did we stop?" Emma asked, her voice rising with panic. "Did you see him? Is he following us?" She twisted in her seat, scanning the empty street behind us with wild eyes. I turned to face her, my own eyes probably reflecting the same shock she must have seen in my expression. "Marcus Holloway," I repeated slowly, testing the words on my tongue like they might burn. "Tall, maybe 6'2", dark hair that he keeps perfectly styled, has a scar on his left wrist from a skiing accident in Aspen, works in real estate investment." With each detail I provided, Emma's face grew paler and her mouth dropped open in disbelief. "How do you know all that?" she whispered, pressing herself further against the door as if I'd suddenly become dangerous too. "Who are you? Did he send you?" Her hand reached for the door handle, ready to bolt into the rainy night. I shook my head quickly, raising my hands in a placating gesture. "No, God, no. Emma, please don't run." I took a shaky breath, forcing myself to say words I'd never spoken aloud to anyone. "I know Marcus because I was with him 2 years ago, for almost 18 months. He destroyed my life, piece by piece, until I had nothing left." The confession hung in the air between us like smoke. Emma's hand slowly released the door handle. She stared at me with a mixture of horror and recognition, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. "You were with Marcus?" she repeated, her voice barely audible. "Before me?" I nodded, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. After all this time, saying it still hurt. "He told me I was special," I continued, the memories flooding back despite my best efforts to keep them buried. "That he'd never felt this way about anyone before. Within 3 months, he'd moved me into his penthouse apartment, cut me off from my friends, convinced me my family didn't understand our love. By month 6, I'd quit my job because he said he wanted to take care of me." Emma's eyes widened, and she nodded slowly. "He said the same things to me, word for word, I think.
how we were soulmates, how everyone else was jealous and trying to tear us apart. She let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. I believed him. I believed every beautiful lie. So did I admitted, wiping at my eyes. Until the first time he hit me. Then he cried and apologized and bought me expensive jewelry, said he was under stress at work, that I'd pushed him too far, made me believe it was somehow my fault. And like a fool, I forgave him. Emma was crying openly now, nodding with each word I spoke. How did you get out? She asked desperately. I've tried 3 times. He always finds me, always convinces me to come back, or threatens me, or... She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence, but I understood what she meant. I turned back around in my seat, staring out at the rain-slicked street ahead. I didn't get out. Not really. He left me. Found someone younger, fresher, someone he hadn't broken yet. He drained my bank account, kept everything we'd bought together, which was everything since I'd given up my apartment, left me homeless and penniless, said I'd never been more than a temporary distraction anyway.
Chapter 3. Unlikely Allies. For several long minutes, neither of us spoke. The rain had started again, gentle drops pattering against the roof of my car like a melancholy soundtrack. Emma wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her hoodie, and I watched her in the mirror, seeing so much of my younger self reflected in her frightened but determined expression. "What if we stopped him?" Emma finally said, her voice quiet but carrying an edge of something new. Not hope exactly, but perhaps defiance. What if we made sure he couldn't do this to anyone else? I turned to look at her again, seeing the way her jaw had set with determination despite the tears still on her cheeks. I tried going to the police, I reminded her gently. They said without evidence of ongoing abuse, there was nothing they could do. And Marcus made sure to never leave marks where anyone could see them. He's too smart for that. The old helplessness threatened to creep back in, but Emma shook her head firmly. I have evidence, she said, reaching for her duffel bag. I've been recording him for weeks. On my phone, hidden cameras in the apartment, everything. I documented every incident, every threat, every time he controlled where I went or who I spoke to. She pulled out her phone, swiping through it with shaking fingers. I even have financial records showing how he's been funneling money from his business accounts. Tax fraud, I think. My heart started beating faster. Why didn't you take all that to the police? I asked her, though I already suspected the answer. Emma's expression darkened with remembered fear. Because the first time I tried, like I said, nothing happened. And after that, he watched me constantly, checked my phone, monitored my computer. I had to be so careful. So how did you get all this? I gestured to her phone. She allowed herself a small, grim smile. He thought I was too stupid to know about cloud storage. Everything's backed up to an account he doesn't know exists under my maiden name. And I have copies on encrypted drives. She patted the duffel bag meaningfully. A wild idea was forming in my mind. Dangerous and possibly stupid, but also thrilling in a way I hadn't felt in years. What if we didn't just turn him in? What if we exposed him? Made sure everyone knew what he really was? Emma leaned forward, her eyes suddenly bright with interest. What do you mean? Marcus's whole life is built on his reputation. His real estate business depends on wealthy clients who think he's sophisticated and trustworthy. His social standing in this city is everything to him. What if we took that away? Made it impossible for him to hurt anyone else because everyone knew the truth. Emma was nodding now, but I could see doubt creeping into her expression. But how? He has lawyers. He'll deny everything, say we're just vindictive ex-girlfriends. People might even believe him over us. She was right, of course. That was exactly what would happen if we weren't careful. We needed more than just your evidence, I said slowly. We need more women. Because, Emma, I guarantee you, we're not the only ones. Marcus has a pattern. Men like him always do. The words felt heavy with truth. How many others had there been before me? How many after Emma? Emma's phone suddenly buzzed, and she jumped like she'd been shocked. Her face went white as she looked at the screen. "It's him," she whispered. "He's calling me. What do I do?" I could hear the panic rising in her voice again, threatening to drown out the spark of rebellion we'd just ignited. "Don't answer," I said firmly. "Let it go to voicemail. In fact, let me see your phone for a second." She handed it over hesitantly, and I quickly showed her how to enable the recording feature for calls. From now on, everything he says to you gets recorded. Every threat, every manipulation. It's all evidence. Chapter 4: The Plan. I pulled back onto the road, but I didn't head toward Rachel's address anymore. Instead, I found myself driving toward the waterfront, to an all-night diner I knew that served terrible coffee but offered complete privacy in its worn vinyl booths. Emma didn't question the change in destination. She seemed to understand that something had shifted between us in these past 15 minutes. The diner was nearly empty when we arrived, just a tired waitress and an old man nursing coffee at the counter. We slid into a corner booth far from the windows, and Emma finally set down her duffel bag. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, I could see she looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, her skin pale and drawn. I probably didn't look much better. "Coffee?" the waitress asked, approaching with a pot in hand. We both nodded gratefully. After she left, Emma wrapped her hands around the steaming mug like it was a lifeline. "I can't believe this is happening," she said quietly. "When I got in your car tonight, I thought I was alone. I felt alone for so long." "You're not alone anymore," I promised her, meaning every word. "We're going to figure this out together. But first, I need you to tell me everything, the whole story, from the beginning. How you met Marcus, what happened, all of it." Emma took a sip of coffee and grimaced at the taste, but she started talking. She'd met Marcus at a charity gala 8 months ago. She'd been there working as a photographer's assistant, capturing the glittering high society event for a local magazine. Marcus had approached her during a break, complimented her work, made her laugh. "He was so charming," she said with bitter hindsight. "So attentive. He made me feel like I was the only woman in the room." The pattern was painfully familiar. He'd pursued her relentlessly, showered her with gifts and attention, moved her into his apartment within weeks. "My friends said it was too fast," Emma admitted. "My sister begged me to slow down, but I thought I'd found my soulmate. I thought people were just jealous of what we had." She laughed hollowly. "I was so stupid." "You weren't stupid," I said firmly. "Marcus is a predator. He knows exactly how to make women feel special, how to isolate them from support systems. It's calculated. You can't blame yourself for falling for it." Emma met my eyes, and I saw gratitude mixed with pain in her expression. The abuse had started gradually, just like it had with me. First, the controlling behavior disguised as concern, then the jealousy and accusations, the verbal abuse that escalated to pushing, to slapping, to worse. "He put me in the hospital once," Emma whispered, her voice breaking. "Said I fell down the stairs. I went along with the lie because I was terrified." My hands clenched into fists on the table. "When was this?" I asked. Emma told me it had been 3 months ago. Around that same time, I'd seen Marcus's photo in the society pages, attending some charity event with a radiant smile. The contrast between his public image and private reality made me feel sick. "That's when I started planning," Emma continued. "I realized he was going to kill me eventually. Maybe not on purpose, but one day he'd hit me too hard or push me down those stairs for real. So I started documenting everything, saving money from my freelance work in a secret account, getting my documents together. Tonight was supposed to be my escape." "What happened tonight?" I asked gently. Emma's hands were shaking as she took another sip of coffee. "He came home early, found me packing. She trailed off, touching her neck where I could now see faint red marks partially hidden by her hoodie. Chapter 5.
searching for truth. We spent the next hour in that diner, Emma showing me everything she'd collected on her phone. Video clips that made my stomach turn, showing Marcus screaming at her, throwing things, backing her into corners. Audio recordings of threats that were both explicit and terrifying. Financial documents she'd photographed showing fraud. Text messages that documented his controlling behavior. It was damning evidence, but I knew from experience it might not be enough. "We need to be strategic about this," I said, thinking out loud. "If we go to the police now, even with all this, Marcus's lawyers will find a way to minimize it, claim it's a domestic dispute, that you're emotionally unstable, whatever." Emma nodded miserably. "So what do we do?" "We build an ironclad case," I said, my mind working through possibilities. "First, we find other victims. If there are multiple women with similar stories, it becomes a pattern that's harder to dismiss. Second, we need someone who can't be bought or intimidated. A journalist, maybe, who specializes in investigative reporting." Emma's eyes lit up with understanding. "I know someone," she said suddenly. "Sarah Chen. She's an investigative reporter for the Chronicle. She did that huge expose last year on the judge who was taking bribes. She's thorough, and she's fearless." Emma pulled up Sarah's contact information on her phone. "I photographed an event she spoke at once. We talked afterward about her work." It was nearly 2 a.m, too late to call a journalist we barely knew, but Emma sent a carefully worded email. "I have evidence of ongoing abuse and fraud involving a prominent local figure. Multiple victims. Need to speak with you urgently about an investigation." We both stared at her phone after she hit send, as if the reporter might respond instantly. "Now we need to focus on finding other women," I said. "Think about Marcus's life, his patterns. Where does he meet people? What does he like to do?" Emma thought for a moment, then started listing places: the country club, charity belas, certain upscale bars and restaurants, the gym. "He's always scouting," she said with disgust. "Even when we were together, I'd catch him looking at other women. I thought I was being paranoid." I pulled out my own phone and started searching social media. Marcus maintained an active presence, carefully curated to show his life as a successful, charming bachelor. Apparently, he'd scrubbed any public evidence of his relationship with Emma. His photos showed him at various events, always impeccably dressed, often with beautiful women at his side. Some were clearly professional contacts, but others looked more personal. "Wait," Emma said, pointing at a photo from 6 months ago. "That's Rebecca. I met her once at the country club. Marcus said she was just a business associate, but I found texts in his phone that suggested otherwise. When I confronted him, he said I was crazy and seeing things that weren't there." The gaslighting was textbook Marcus. We spent the next hour going through Marcus's social media and Emma's memories, identifying women who might have been romantically involved with him. We found 5 potential names. "How do we approach them?" Emma asked. "We can't just message them out of nowhere saying, 'Hey, did Marcus Holloway abuse you too?'" "No, but we can be subtle," I suggested. "We say we're gathering information about him for legal purposes, that we believe there may have been a pattern of concerning behavior. We let them know they're not alone if they experienced anything troubling. Some won't respond, but if even 1 or 2 do, it strengthens our case." Emma nodded slowly. Before we could start crafting messages, Emma's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from an unknown number. "I know you're with someone. I know you're planning something. Come home now and I'll forget this happened. Keep running and you'll regret it." The words were chilling in their casual menace. Marcus was escalating. "He's tracking you somehow," I said urgently. "Your phone, maybe? Or he has someone following us." Emma's eyes widened with fear. "What do we do?" I thought quickly. "We need to get you somewhere safe first. Rachel's place is out. If Marcus knows you're with someone, he might figure out where you're going. Is there anywhere else? Somewhere he'd never think to look?" Chapter 6. Finding Sanctuary. Emma thought for a long moment, chewing her bottom lip. "My aunt," she finally said. "My mom's sister. She lives about an hour outside the city, in Millbrook. Marcus has never met her. I haven't seen her in years, since before I met him. He wouldn't know she existed. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. Call her, I urged. See if she'll take you in, even just for a few days. Emma hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with asking for help after so long in isolation. But she made the call. Her aunt answered on the third ring, voice groggy with sleep. Within minutes of Emma explaining, in vague terms, that she needed a place to stay, her aunt had agreed without question. Some bonds, it seemed, transcended time and distance. We left the diner and got back in my car, but before driving anywhere, I had Emma remove the battery from her phone. If he's tracking you through it, this should help, I explained. We'll get you a burner phone tomorrow. Emma nodded, watching as I popped the battery out and wrapped both pieces in a napkin from the diner. The drive to Millbrook took us through increasingly rural areas as we left the city behind. The rain had finally stopped, and a clear night sky revealed itself, stars scattered like diamonds across a black velvet. Emma had dozed off in the back seat, exhausted from her emotional ordeal. I drove in silence, my mind racing with everything we needed to do. Finding other victims, building a case, exposing Marcus before he could hurt anyone else. It felt overwhelming and impossible, but also necessary. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like I had a purpose beyond just surviving. Maybe this was what healing actually looked like. Not forgetting what happened, but using it to protect others. Emma's aunt lived in a small cottage surrounded by trees, the kind of place that felt like it existed outside of time. Marianne was waiting on the porch when we pulled up, a wool cardigan wrapped around her nightgown. She had Emma's same blonde hair, though threaded with silver, and kind eyes that immediately teared up when she saw her niece. "Oh, sweetheart," Marianne breathed, pulling Emma into a fierce hug as soon as she stepped out of the car. Emma broke down crying in her aunt's arms, and I stood awkwardly by my car, feeling like an intruder on this private moment. "You must be the driver," Marianne said, turning to me with a grateful smile. "Come inside. It's late and you look exhausted. There's a guest room if you need to rest before driving back." I started to refuse, but Emma caught my hand. "Please stay, at least until morning. I feel safer knowing you're here." Inside, Marianne's cottage was cozy and warm, filled with handmade quilts and bookshelves, overflowing with well-loved paperbacks. She made us tea and quietly assessed the situation with the wisdom of someone who'd seen her share of life's hardships. "What Emma needs now is safety and time," she said firmly. "And you both need a plan. Men like this Marcus don't just let go." We sat at Marianne's kitchen table until dawn, working out the details. Marianne would keep Emma safe while I went back to the city to investigate. We'd communicate through burner phones. I'd reach out to the women we'd identified, see if any would talk to us. We'd wait to hear from Sarah Chen, the journalist, and we'd stay vigilant because Marcus wouldn't stop looking. "Why are you doing this?" Marianne asked me at one point, her gaze shrewd. "You could have just dropped Emma off and walked away. No one would have blamed you." I thought about my answer carefully. Because I know what it's like to have no one, and because Marcus has gotten away with this for too long. It has to stop. Chapter 7. Peeling Back the Mask. I drove back to the city as the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. My body was exhausted, but my mind was alert, planning the next moves. First, I needed to sleep for a few hours. Then I'd start reaching out to the women we'd identified. I couldn't use my regular rideshare account anymore. Marcus might somehow track Emma's ride history and find me. That meant I'd have to take time off work, which I couldn't really afford, but this was more important. When I got home to my small studio apartment, I found a message from Emma on my phone. She'd woken up and wanted to thank me again. She'd also had a thought. There was a woman named Diane who worked at Marcus's real estate office. "She always seemed scared of him," Emma had written, "jumpy whenever he came around. I think something might have happened there. Worth checking out?"
After a few hours of restless sleep filled with nightmares about Marcus, I woke and made coffee. Time to become an investigator. I started with social media, deep diving into the backgrounds of the women we'd identified. Rebecca Turner, the woman Emma had recognized in Marcus's photos, worked as an event planner. Her Instagram showed a glamorous life, but her posts had abruptly stopped 3 months ago. When they resumed, they were different, less personal, more professional, as if she'd pulled back from sharing her real life. I crafted a careful message to Rebecca through Instagram. Hi, Rebecca. My name is Claire. I'm gathering information regarding Marcus Holloway for legal purposes. If you had any relationship or interactions with him that you'd be willing to discuss confidentially, please reach out. You're not alone. I hesitated before hitting send, knowing I might be opening old wounds, but pressed the button anyway. Next was Diane from Marcus's office. This required more finesse since she was a current employee. I found a business website and called the office, asking to speak with her about a property listing. When Diane answered, I lowered my voice. I'm not actually calling about real estate. My name is Claire. I'm looking into Marcus Holloway's treatment of women he's been involved with. I believe you might have information that could help. Is there a time we could meet privately? The silence on the other end stretched so long, I thought Diane had hung up. Then, barely audible, how did you know? My heart raced, because I was one of them too, and so was another woman I just met. We think there are more. Diane, if he did something to you, you deserve justice. We're building a case. I can't talk now, Diane whispered urgently, but I get off at 5. There's a park 2 blocks from the office, Riverside Park. I'll meet you there at 5:30. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, feeling a mix of triumph and dread. We were right. There were more victims. I spent the afternoon researching Sarah Chen, the investigative journalist. Her work was impressive. She'd exposed corruption in multiple city institutions, always with meticulous documentation and courageous reporting. If anyone could help us, it was her. As if on cue, my phone pinged with an email notification. Sarah had responded to Emma. I'm very interested in this story. Can we meet tomorrow? I'm happy to sign an NDA to protect your identity until you're ready to go public. Bring any documentation you have. If this is as significant as you suggest, I want to help you expose the truth. Emma had forwarded me the email with the message, This is really happening. I'm scared, but also hopeful. At 5:15, I headed to Riverside Park. It was a crisp November evening, the kind where you can see your breath mist in the air. The park was mostly empty, except for a few joggers and dog walkers. I found a bench near the fountain and waited, my nerves on edge. What if Diane didn't show up? What if this was a trap? What if Marcus somehow knew what we were doing? But at 5:32, a petite woman with dark hair approached hesitantly. She wore glasses and a conservative business suit, carrying her purse clutched tightly to her chest. Claire? She asked. I nodded and gestured to the bench. Diane sat down but maintained distance between us, like a wild animal ready to bolt. Thank you for meeting me, I started gently. I know this must be difficult. Diane didn't look at me, keeping her eyes fixed on the fountain. I've never told anyone what happened, she said, her voice trembling. I convinced myself it wasn't that bad, that I was overreacting. But when you called, I realized I've been waiting for someone to ask.
Chapter 8. The Network of Survivors. Diane's story poured out in fits and starts, painful memories she'd tried to bury for 2 years. She'd been Marcus's assistant when she first started at the real estate firm, fresh out of college and thrilled to work for such a successful, charming businessman. Within weeks, Marcus had begun making inappropriate comments, then inappropriate touches, then explicit demands. He said it was part of the job, Diane whispered, her hands shaking as she twisted a tissue between her fingers. that this was how successful women got ahead in the business world. I was so young and naive. I believed him, or at least I convinced myself I did. I needed the job. I had student loans and rent to pay. The abuse had escalated over months until one night Marcus had cornered her in the office after everyone else had left. Diane's voice broke as she described what happened next, and I felt rage burning in my chest. He'd assaulted her, then threatened her job if she told anyone. He said no one would believe me anyway, she said. That everyone knew I was ambitious and would assume I'd been using my feminine wiles to get promoted. "Why didn't you quit?" I asked, then immediately regretted the question. It sounded like blame when I knew better, but Diane answered anyway. "I tried. I interviewed other places, but Marcus sabotaged me. He'd call the companies pretending to be a reference and say terrible things about my work ethic and professionalism. I figured out what he was doing when a hiring manager felt bad and told me. Eventually, I gave up and just tried to avoid him as much as possible." I told Diane about Emma, about myself, about what we were trying to do. Her eyes widened as she realized the scope of Marcus's behavior. "There are more of us?" she asked, sounding stunned. I thought I was the only one. I thought there was something wrong with me that attracted his attention. "No," I said firmly. "This is what predators do. They choose vulnerable targets, isolate them, make them feel special, and then worthless. It's a pattern, and we're going to expose it." Diane looked at me with hope and fear warring in her expression. "But he's so powerful. He has connections, money, lawyers. How can we possibly win against someone like that? Because we're not alone anymore. Strength in numbers. And because we have evidence and a journalist who wants to help us tell our stories. Will you be part of this, Diane? Will you add your testimony to ours?" She didn't answer right away, staring at the fountain's cascading water as if seeking wisdom in its patterns. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Yes. Yes, I'll do it. If it means he can't hurt anyone else, I'll do it." We exchanged contact information, and I gave her one of the burner phones I'd bought that afternoon. "Use this to communicate about anything related to Marcus. We can't be too careful." As Diane left, my phone buzzed with a message from my regular number. Rebecca Turner had responded to my Instagram message. "I need to talk to you. When can we meet?" My heart leaped. Another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Another survivor ready to speak up. I replied immediately, suggesting a coffee shop in a busy part of town for tomorrow afternoon. That night, I called Emma on her burner phone and updated her on everything. She was simultaneously thrilled and terrified by our progress. "This is really happening," she kept repeating. "We're actually doing this." Marianne spoke to me briefly too, thanking me for helping her niece and assuring me Enna was safe. "She's stronger than she thinks," Marianne said. "You both are." Sleep was difficult again, my mind refusing to quiet down. I kept thinking about Marcus, wondering if he'd figured out yet that Emma wasn't coming back, wondering if he was looking for her, for me. The thought should have terrified me, but instead I felt a cold determination settling in my chest. Let him look. We were building something he couldn't stop. The next morning, I met with Sarah Chen at her office at the Chronicle. She was in her early 40s with short black hair and sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Her walls were covered with awards and framed newspaper articles documenting her investigative triumphs. She listened intently as I told her everything, taking notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. "This is significant," Sarah said when I finished. "If we can document a pattern of abuse and fraud spanning years with multiple victims, this becomes a major story. But I need to be clear with you. This will be difficult. Marcus Holloway will fight back with everything he has. He'll try to discredit you all. Dig into your pasts, make you regret coming forward. Are you prepared for that?" Chapter 9. The Storm Approaches. I met Rebecca Turner that afternoon at a bustling coffee shop in downtown.
the kind of place where conversations could disappear into the ambient noise. Rebecca was stunning, tall and elegant with auburn hair and green eyes that held a guarded wariness. She ordered a latte with shaking hands, and we found a corner table away from the windows. "I almost didn't come," Rebecca admitted, stirring her coffee without drinking it. "Part of me wanted to just pretend I never saw your message. But I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of letting what he did to me control my life." She finally met my eyes, and I saw pain there, but also defiance. Rebecca's story was different from ours in details, but sickeningly similar in pattern. She'd met Marcus at a charity auction 18 months ago. He'd pursued her relentlessly, sweeping her off her feet with grand romantic gestures and expensive dates. "I thought I'd won the lottery," she said bitterly. "Rich, handsome, charming, what more could I want?" The relationship had moved quickly, as Marcus's relationships always did, but Rebecca had been more independent than his usual targets. She had her own successful business, a strong friend network, financial security. I think that frustrated him. He couldn't isolate me as easily as he probably wanted to, so he got more aggressive, more controlling, started showing up at my events unannounced, questioning where I'd been, accusing me of cheating. The first time Marcus hit her, Rebecca immediately ended the relationship. But then the harassment began. Hundreds of texts and calls, showing up at her workplace, sending gifts with increasingly disturbing notes. "He made my life hell for 3 months," she said. "I got a restraining order, but he violated it constantly. His lawyers managed to get it dismissed, claiming I'd exaggerated our problems. Finally, I moved to a new apartment and changed my number. It's been 6 months since he's contacted me. I thought it was over." Rebecca's hands clenched around her coffee cup. "But I still can't date anyone. I'm terrified all the time that he'll show back up. I sleep with a baseball bat next to my bed." I shared our plan with Rebecca, gathering multiple victims, documenting everything, going public through Sarah Chen's investigative reporting. Rebecca listened intently, and I could see her mind working through the implications. "If we do this, he'll come after us," she said. "You know that, right? He won't just accept exposure and punishment. He'll want revenge." "Probably," I agreed. "But what's the alternative? We spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, living in fear, while he continues to abuse other women? At some point, we have to stand up to him, and now we have the numbers and the evidence to actually make a difference." Rebecca took a deep breath and nodded. "I'm in. Tell me what you need from me." Over the next hour, Rebecca showed me her own evidence, police reports from when she'd tried to get the restraining order, screenshots of threatening messages, medical records from when Marcus had grabbed her arms so hard he left bruises. Combined with Emma's and Diane's documentation, we were building an overwhelming case. Sarah Chen was right. This was significant. As Rebecca and I parted ways, she surprised me by pulling me into a hug. "Thank you," she whispered, "for making me feel less alone, for giving me hope that he might actually face consequences." I hugged her back, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. These women were trusting me to help them get justice. I spent that evening with Sarah, going through all the evidence we'd collected so far. She was meticulous, fact-checking every detail, making notes about what additional documentation we'd need. "I want to interview each of you on camera. Your faces blurred and voices disguised if you prefer, but having the interviews will make the story more powerful. Personal testimony combined with concrete evidence, that's what creates real impact." Sarah also wanted to investigate Marcus's business dealings more thoroughly. If he's committing financial fraud like Emma's documents suggest, that's a separate angle. Rich men often get away with abusing women, but threaten their money and society suddenly pays attention. Let me dig into his business records, see what I can find. The cynicism in her voice was earned, but also practical. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept checking the burner phone, waiting for messages from Emma, Diane, or Rebecca. Around 2 a.m., my regular phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Claire," Marcus's voice came through the line, smooth and dangerous. "We need to talk." My blood ran cold. How did he get my number? How did he even know my name? I have nothing to say to you, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. Marcus laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. Oh, I think you do. I know you have Emma. I know you're plotting something with her. Whatever you think you're doing, stop now. This doesn't concern you. It concerns me when you hurt people, when you abuse women and think you can get away with it forever. That ends now, Marcus. The silence that followed was oppressive. When Marcus spoke again, his voice had dropped to a threatening whisper. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Claire. I will destroy you. I will destroy Emma. I will destroy anyone who tries to come between me and what's mine. Chapter 10. The Reckoning. I hung up on Marcus, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. He knew. He knew everything, or at least enough to be dangerous. I immediately called Emma on the burner phone, waking her. He called me, I said urgently. Marcus knows we're working together. You need to stay put, stay hidden. Don't go anywhere without your aunt. I'm going to call the others. Emma's voice was tight with fear. How did he find you? She asked. I was so careful. I didn't tell anyone about you. I thought back to that first night. The rideshare app, the electronic trail we'd left. The app, I realized. He must have accessed your account somehow, saw my profile information. Emma, we need to move faster than we planned. If Marcus is escalating, we can't wait. I called Sarah Chen next, despite the late hour. She answered alert and professional, like she'd been expecting bad news. Marcus contacted me, I explained. He's threatening us. We need to publish this story now before he can do more damage. Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking. I need at least 3 more days to verify everything and write the article. Can you all stay safe that long? We'll have to, I said grimly. Sarah gave me advice on security measures, varying our routines, staying in public places, documenting any contact from Marcus or his associates. If he threatens you again, report it immediately. Get it on record with the police. Even if they don't act right away, it creates a paper trail. She paused. Claire, are you sure you want to see this through? It's not too late to walk away. I'm sure, I said without hesitation. This has to end, not just for us, but for every woman who might cross his path in the future. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my apartment, listening to the city sounds outside my window. Cars passing, distant sirens, the hum of life continuing, unaware of the small war being waged in the shadows. The next 3 days were a blur of paranoia and preparation. I stayed with friends, never sleeping in the same place twice. Emma remained with Marianne, though we could tell the stress was wearing on her. Diane called one night in tears. Marcus had cornered her at work, subtly threatening her job if she spread rumors about him. Rebecca reported that someone had been following her, though she couldn't prove it was Marcus's doing. Sarah worked around the clock, verifying every detail of our stories and digging deeper into Marcus's business affairs. What she found was damning, not just fraud, but connections to money laundering through his real estate investments. This is bigger than I thought, Sarah told me on day 2. I've alerted federal authorities. They're interested in the financial crimes, which means they'll offer protection in exchange for testimony. On the 3rd day, Sarah called an emergency meeting at her office. All 4 of us gathered, me, Emma, Diane, and Rebecca, along with Sarah and her editor. The mood was tense but determined. The article runs tomorrow morning, Sarah announced. Front page, full investigation. But I need your final permission to use your names and photos. I know we discussed anonymity, but the story has more impact if you're willing to go public. We looked at each other, these 4 women bound together by one man's cruelty. Emma spoke first. I'll do it. I'll use my name. I'm done hiding from him. Diane nodded, though she looked terrified. Me too. He doesn't get to scare me anymore. Rebecca squared her shoulders. Absolutely. Let everyone see who Marcus Holloway really is. They all turned to look at me. Yes, I said without hesitation. This has to end. Not just for us, but for every woman who might cross his path in the future. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my apartment, listening to the city sounds outside my window. Cars passing, distant sirens, the hum of life continuing, unaware of the small war being waged in the shadows. That night, none of us slept. We stayed together at Sarah's house, safety in numbers. We ordered pizza and tried to distract ourselves with movies, but the tension was palpable. At midnight, Emma's burner phone rang. We all froze. She answered on speaker. Marcus's voice filled the room, honeyed and venomous. "Emma, darling, I know you're planning something foolish. Come home now and I promise I'll forgive you. Keep going and—" "And what, Marcus? You'll hurt me? You already did that. You'll destroy my life? You already tried. The difference now is that I'm not alone anymore. There are 4 of us, Marcus. 4 women whose lives you tried to ruin, and tomorrow, everyone is going to know who you are." She hung up before he could respond. We stared at each other in stunned silence. Then Rebecca started laughing. Not hysterical laughter, but genuine, liberating laughter. "Did you hear his voice? He's scared. Marcus Holloway is actually scared of us." The laughter spread through the group, tension releasing in waves. For the first time, we felt like victors instead of victims. At 6 a.m., Sarah's article went live. "Prominent real estate developer accused of systematic abuse and fraud," read the headline, with ire photos and Marcus's underneath. The article was comprehensive and devastating, laying out years of abuse, multiple victims, financial crimes, and a pattern of manipulation. Sarah had even found 2 additional women willing to provide anonymous testimony, bringing the total to 6 known victims. By 8 a.m., the story had gone viral. News vans were camped outside Marcus's office and apartment building. His business partners were issuing statements distancing themselves from him. The police announced they were opening an investigation into the abuse allegations. Federal authorities confirmed they were looking into the financial crimes. Chapter 11: Aftermath and Justice. The media firestorm that followed the article's publication exceeded even Sarah's expectations. Within 24 hours, 3 more women came forward with their own stories of abuse by Marcus Holloway. The pattern was undeniable now. A decade-long campaign of predatory behavior toward vulnerable women, all while maintaining a spotless public reputation. His real estate empire, built on fraud and funded partly by stolen money, began to collapse as investors fled and prosecutors built their case. Marcus tried to fight back, of course. His lawyers issued statements calling us liars and attention seekers. He gave an interview claiming we were disgruntled ex-girlfriends conspiring to ruin him out of jealousy. But the evidence was overwhelming, and public opinion had already turned. His friends abandoned him, his country club revoked his membership, and his face became synonymous with the kind of abuse people had finally stopped tolerating. 2 weeks after the article published, Marcus was arrested on multiple charges: assault, fraud, money laundering, and stalking. Emma, Diane, Rebecca, and I stood together outside the courthouse as he was led inside in handcuffs, his expensive suit rumpled, and his confident demeanor finally shattered. He looked at us as he passed, and for a moment, our eyes met. I saw hatred there, but also defeat. He knew he'd lost. The trial took months to prepare. We each gave our testimony, reliving painful memories, but also reclaiming our power over them. Other women came forward during the investigation, bringing the total count of victims to 11. Marcus's defense tried to paint us as opportunists, but the evidence, videos, recordings, financial documents, medical records, told a story that couldn't be denied. In the end, Marcus Holloway was convicted on 15 counts and sentenced to 12 years in prison. It wasn't enough. No sentence could truly compensate for the damage he'd done, but it was something. It was accountability. It was justice, however imperfect, and it meant he couldn't hurt anyone else for a very long time. The 4 of us, Emma, Diane, Rebecca, and me, formed a bond that transcended our shared trauma. We started a support group for abuse survivors, partnering with local organizations to provide resources and advocacy. Emma went back to photography. Her work now focused on portraits of survivors.
Diane left Marcus's company and found a better position at a firm that valued her skills. Rebecca slowly learned to trust again, even starting to date someone new. And I finished my psychology degree, determined to help other women recognize and escape abusive relationships. Sometimes I think about that rainy November night when Emma slid into my backseat, crying and desperate. If I'd just driven her to her destination and moved on with my life, none of this would have happened. Marcus would still be free, still be hurting people. Emma might not have survived, but I didn't drive away. I listened, I helped, and together we changed everything. Life isn't a fairy tale where survivors are magically healed once their abuser faces consequences. We all still have bad days, nightmares, moments of fear and doubt, but we also have strength, solidarity, and the knowledge that we fought back and won. We took a man who seemed untouchable and proved he was just human after all, and a criminal one at that. Emma Chen won a journalism award for her investigative reporting. She continues to expose corruption and abuse, using our story as an example of what's possible when survivors support each other. Marianne, Emma's aunt, became a fierce advocate for domestic violence victims in her community. Even the rideshare app I worked for used our story to implement better safety protocols for both drivers and passengers. A year after Marcus's conviction, the four of us gathered at the coffee shop where Rebecca and I first met. We looked different now, lighter somehow, like we'd set down burdens we'd been carrying for too long. We talked about the future, about dreams we'd abandoned and are now reclaiming, about the women we were. A year after Marcus's conviction, the four of us gathered at the coffee shop where Rebecca and I first met. We looked different now, lighter somehow, like we'd set down burdens we'd been carrying for too long. We talked about the future, about dreams we'd abandoned and were now reclaiming, about the women we were becoming instead of the women Marcus had tried to destroy. To second chances, Emma said, raising her coffee cup. We all clinked our hugs together, smiling through tears, because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's healing. It's rebuilding. It's refusing to let the worst moment of your life define all the moments that come after. That rainy November night changed everything. One rideshare trip, one moment of choosing to listen instead of looking away, one decision to fight back together instead of suffering alone. And now, hundreds of women have reached out to our support group, finding strength in our story and hope in their own. Marcus Holloway tried to break us. Instead, we broke his power. And that makes all the difference. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to our channel for more powerful true stories about courage, survival, and justice. Hit that like button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. And most importantly, leave a comment below telling us what city you're listening from. Let's build a global community of survivors and supporters. Your voice matters. Your story matters. You are not alone.